Do 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 do. Ra-pa-pa-pa-po. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Scott Adams, the best thing you've ever seen in your whole darn life. And it's going to be amazing today. There's a whiteboard, so don't leave before you see that. It's going to be great. And if you like this experience, to go to levels that nobody's seen, I don't know, for thousands of years, all you need is a cup or a mug or a glass, a tankard, chalice, a stein, a canteen, jug or flask, a vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. I like coffee. Join me now for the unparalleled pleasure. Oh, it looks like I've got a problem on my live stream. The dopamine of the day thing that makes everything better, except my live stream. It's called the simultaneous sip, and it happens now. Go. That's good. Well, let's see what my problem is. So it looks like Rumble's not moving. Rumble is dead. Stream was entered or deleted at the destination. Stream's key up. My stream key. Well, look at that. Bad stream key. All right. The streaming key that I'm using for Rumble, I believe it's an alpha technology. So I'm one of the early adopters. They may be tweaking it still. So Rumble's not working today. But we'll probably get that up and working. Hey, new audio badge. Thank you. I love that. All right. So shall we talk about all the things? It's quite a thing. All right, number one. What up, my colonizers? That's going to be my new catchphrase. What up, my colonizers? Now remember, colonizer is a word that can only be used by white people. It's like the N word, but for white people. So we could call it the C word, but somebody already used the C word for that other word. So I remind you that when people call you a colonizer, they are marking you for death. Literally. If somebody calls you a colonizer, they're putting you in the othering category of people who can be murdered later. And let me say it as clearly as possible. That's not hyperbole. That's a literal definition of where we're heading, unless something changes. But if it becomes okay to call people colonizers, you're eventually going to get killed. The odds are very high. So nobody can use that word except people who are colonizers, apparently, such as myself. Mike Benz reminds us of this good rule. I love this rule. If you see an article that refers to, quote, researchers, Mike Benz says, those researchers, they're always the CIA. I don't know if that's true 100% of the time, but it's a good rule of thumb, as Mike Benz says. Here's an example. Bloomberg had an article that said, quote, researchers said that X, the platform X, was unreliable with information. The researchers said that. I guess those researchers looked into it. So in your head, just translate researchers to CIA, and then you'll have a different sense of what's going on. And of course, Bloomberg is not real news, if you didn't know that. Yeah, Bloomberg is one of the names pretty heavily associated with fake news. They have lots of real news. I mean, Bloomberg does have real stories, but they did a hit piece on me a few years ago. It was just garbage. The stories about public figures are always false, but theirs was really false. All right, let's say you were a clever person and you wanted to take Elon Musk completely out of the game, take him off the chessboard because you didn't like his politics. Or let's say you wanted to get rid of the X platform, and you could do that by getting rid of Elon Musk as well. How would you do it? Well, here's how I'd do it. I would first get my cronies to pass a law that says that you can't have a lot of disinformation on your social media. But that's always been the case, right? We always didn't want to have a lot of disinformation and hate speech and stuff like that. Then I would create some watchdog groups and I'd put my cronies in there. And then I'd have all my friends say, hey, according to our fact checking group, this X platform is sending out a lot of disinformation. And then I would have my people who were also my cronies, I would have them put the X platform out of business, send them a threatening letter and says, you're full of disinformation. And then when they ask you to prove it, you just say, well, look at these fact checkers who are my friends. And then you say, can the fact checkers show me the evidence? Change the subject. No, but can you actually show me where all the disinformation is? And could you put it in context so I could see if the disinformation on the X platform is better or worse than other platforms or even the local news? Nope. So that's how I do it. So in a completely unrelated story, the EU has already sent a letter to Elon Musk telling him that according to their fact checkers, who are basically have the same paymasters in a sense, that they've decided there's too much misinformation, and the EU might want to close down the X platform from their territories. So put this under the category of everything you thought was happening is probably happening. Like every conspiracy theory you ever thought of, every one of them. Yeah. All the fact checking is fake. But in this case, even the law is fake. They created a fake law just to get rid of X because it's the only place that there's any free speech. There is a really strong push to get rid of all free speech. And I used to not say that. I used to think, no, it's just political. Nobody wants to get rid of free speech. But it's pretty clear now that is exactly the goal, to get rid of free speech so that the side that thinks is right doesn't have to deal with any dissent. So it really is a huge part of the world trying to get rid of free speech. I don't think they thought it through. Well, the best stories that are happening lately, in terms of interesting as opposed to bloody and horrible, we'll also get to the bloody, horrible stuff, is Harvard. So you probably heard that a bunch of Harvard students got together, put out some kind of statement, and they were affiliated with a whole bunch of different organizations within Harvard, but I don't think they used their actual names. I think they wanted some anonymity. But they came out in favor of the Palestinian view of things and opposed to Israel's actions. Now, that is not really very popular in the country right now, but a number of people at Harvard did that. But it gets better. It gets better. So Lawrence Summers tweeted this. I told you this the other day. He tweeted, in nearly 50 years of Harvard affiliation, I have never been as disillusioned and alienated as I am today. Now, remember, Lawrence Summers is, he's worked there. He's really well identified with Harvard. And then I saw this tweet in response from Nathan Kofnas, just somebody on Twitter, who said to Larry Summers, liberal boomer Jews. Now, the speaker is also Jewish. You should have that context. Liberal boomer Jews who helped create the system will spend the rest of their lives being surprised by the fact that Jews rank at the bottom of the new racial hierarchy, according to Harvard. Then he goes on, Nathan says, I was rejected from Harvard when Lawrence Summers was president. Maybe if he created an admission system that favored more people like me and fewer affirmative action anti-Semites, 18 years later, he wouldn't be so, quote, disillusioned and alienated. Ouch. Oh my God. And then he finishes it off with, but in Larry's mind, I'm sure it will remain a mystery how this could have happened. Ouch. Fuck. Nathan Kofnas, You're good with your arguments. That felt like a stake right through his heart. Yeah, Lawrence Summers, you caused this thing that makes you hate your alma mater. You destroyed the most respected higher education entity in the country. I mean, you could argue it was highest. Wow. Hey, but there's more. There's more. Um, so it started with, let's see, Ian Bremmer was tweeting on October 8th. He said, a large number of Harvard student organizations, so this is what I mentioned before, but just with some details, blaming Israel solely for Hamas terrorist attacks, killing 700. And then Ian Bremmer says, can't imagine who would want to identify with such a group. Harvard parents, talk to your educated kids about this. So Bill Ackman sees this tweet and adds his own thoughts. Now, Bill Ackman is a very famous hedge fund manager, and often he says political things in social media. So he's sort of a big voice. I'm not entirely sure if he identifies as Democrat or Republican, which I feel like I want to give him a standing ovation for. That's pretty rare. I've actually read quite a few of Bill Ackman's opinions. I actually don't know if he's left or right. So good for you, Bill Ackman. Now I don't agree with all of his opinions, but I actually can't tell if he's leans Democrat or Republican. And my God, that's like a national asset. So people like him who you actually can't tell which way you go, that really is like a resource. That's like an asset for the country. Even if you don't agree with him, at least you know he's not just a team player. All right, so Bill Ackman, who is well known to everybody in business, every CEO in the world would know his name. He says this: I have been asked by a number of CEOs if Harvard would release a list of the members of each of the Harvard organizations that have issued the letter assigning sole responsibility for Hamas heinous acts on Israel, so as to ensure that none of us inadvertently hire any of their members. If, in fact, their members support the letter they have released, the names of the signatories should be made public so their views are publicly known. One should not be able to hide behind a corporate shield, meaning, I guess, Harvard and its clubs, when issuing statements supporting the actions of terrorists who, we now learn, have beheaded babies, among other inconceivably despicable acts. Now, I replied to this by saying, I don't know anyone who would hire a person with pronouns in their social media bio because it's a strong signal for trouble. But now we have another no-go. And I was thinking, I feel like we need Kamala Harris to sort this out, because the Venn diagram of people who put pronouns in their social media bios compared to the people who might blame Israel for Hamas murdering their children, might be quite a bit of, Venn diagram overlap there, a little bit of overlap, possibly. Anyway, Mehdi Hassan of MSNBC responds to Bill Ackman, saying that they don't want to accidentally hire anybody who supports terrorists. Now, just hold this in your mind. So Bill Ackman is saying, in effect, they want to make sure they don't accidentally hire somebody who's supporting terrorists. Does that seem reasonable? Seems pretty reasonable to me. Mehdi Hassan says, you don't believe in free speech? Is any of this about free speech? No, it's about the content of your free speech. The content still matters. And Megyn Kelly, responded to Mehdi Hassan by saying, maybe it's me, but it feels like an applicant's open support for terrorism, including the decapitation of babies, is indeed the kind of free speech an employer should consider before hiring a person. And boom, Mehdi Hassan. Your game is up, Mehdi Hassan. So we certainly have reached the peak of wokeism at Harvard, because this was the part we needed. And again, Bill Ackman's like a national treasure for even doing this, because it takes a lot of guts to come right out and say we should not hire people like this. It's very close to saying don't hire the woke, which I say don't hire the woke. You'd be a fucking idiot to hire anybody with pronouns in their bio. Not because they're not awesome people. Many of them are probably awesome people. But it is such a strong signal that they're going to cause trouble. Why would you put up with that? So I wouldn't hire anybody with their pronouns in their bio. But again, many of them would be great employees. They're just going along with the trend or whatever. But I wouldn't take a chance. That's just such a big signal for problems. And supporting Hamas is a pretty big signal too. I've got a question for you, and this has to do with the fact that most humans can't handle any topic that has more than maybe 5 variables, which is understandable. 5 variables in any topic it actually is kind of hard to put your mind around it. And I've fallen for the problem as well. I'm not immune to that. But when you look at Israel, I see a lot of people talking about past excellent peace deals that Israel has offered that were turned down. Do you think that they were intentionally like really good deals, and that when the Palestinians or whoever they're negotiating with, when they looked at them, do you think that the Palestinians thought that they were good deals? Well, they turned them all down. So apparently not. But here's a real question I ask you. Given that we know that these populations that Israel would have been negotiating with harbored a whole lot of people, I don't know what percentage, but it was a lot of people in a raw number, who want to kill all the Jews and destroy Israel as a country, and they're going to stop at nothing to do it. My question is this. Israel isn't stupid, right? So under what situation would they ever want to make peace with an entity that's filled with people who want to kill them, and that entity is not trying to stop them from doing it? In fact, it might be encouraging them, might even be funding them. Why would you want to build up a very prosperous society that has too many people in it that want to kill your people, like murder your babies? That would be stupid. It never made sense for Israel to do a peace deal. It never made sense. It did make sense to pretend. That made sense. And it probably made sense for the Palestinians to pretend, because I think they knew it wasn't going to happen, just speculating. But there was only one direction this could go. And do you know what that direction was? Eventually, the bad guys, Hamas, would do a bigger attack and would kill enough people that Israel would finally have what it has needed all along, which is a free pass to take care of what it needs to take care of. So where we are now is not the terrible, terrible mistake of history. I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible beyond even imagination. But it was also the only way it could go. The design of the system guaranteed we would be here, just not what year it would happen. The only question mark was, well, is it going to happen this year, 5 years from now? But it had to happen because the bad guys were getting stronger and stronger. And they weren't just going to sit there getting stronger. They were going to deploy their forces. When they did, finally, at great cost, and nobody would have imagined this much of a cost, but at great cost, Israel finally got its freedom. Its freedom to do what it needs to do, which will be absolutely horrible. Now, if you say to me, Scott, are you making a moral equivalence between this or that? My answer is, fuck you, you stupid asshole. No, I'm not making any moral equivalence ever. You don't even have to ask me the question. No, I'm never making a moral equivalence. I just don't do that. I talk about things that are bad, and they might be, maybe I'll talk about one side today, and maybe later I'll talk about the other side. But no, I'm just trying to let me take a little detour here. Some of you have probably already noticed that if all you're trying to do is say, let's say, put your opinion into the Israel war situation, that even if you're backing the team that you should be backing at this point, if you don't say it right, that team will destroy you. I want to be clear about that, right? I'm as pro-Israel as you could possibly be, and have been for as long as I can remember. But if I say anything that's not 100% looks like it's supportive, or even if you could interpret it as, whoa, what did you leave out there, Scott? Like people are just looking for ways to misinterpret you. So I've never been in a situation where people were more looking for ways to misinterpret you. So it's a really dangerous time to be in public figures. And I've noticed it with a number of public figures who clearly do not have despicable views, but they just worded something in a certain way, a little carelessly, and man, they're getting killed. So be really careful what you say in public, okay? That said, there's something I do need to tell you about the war, but I'm only going to tell the people on locals because there isn't any way because that's private. Later, I'll tell them after the show. Because there are some things that I can't say in the general public because the atmosphere is just too hot, right? It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change who I support. Doesn't change my opinion. It won't change your opinion either. Won't change anybody's opinion. So don't worry about it. There's just a little insight that I can't say in public. That's all. I'll say it within the small public group after the show. So here's my bottom line. It never would have made sense for Israel to make peace with its neighbors while its neighbors were full of people who wanted to kill them and nothing was going to stop them. The only thing that'll stop them is just not being there or being dead. And so now Israel has the freedom to make both of those things happen. So there won't be too much left of Hamas when they're done. All right, or Gaza, I'm sure. See, I did it again. Now watch this. I said there won't be too much of Gaza left. How easy would it be for somebody to take that out of context and say, oh, he's celebrating the death of women and children in Gaza? No, I don't want anybody to die. I don't want anybody to suffer except the bad guys, just period. But it's also a fact that there's no way to get that. There's no way for me to have what I want. And there's no way for you to have what you want either. This is not about what anybody wants. None of this is about what you want. This is just power. Whoever exhibits the most power will get some advantage. There's no right or wrong. Well, there it is again. Imagine how easy it would be to take that out of context. There's no right or wrong. Immediately that turns into, really? Oh, they're equivalent? Are you saying that they're equivalent on both sides? No, I never say that. I never say that. But you see the landmines, right? Like even as I'm talking, you could take almost anything I say as an individual sentence and say, you really didn't show enough deference to the one side that's the victims. You just can't avoid it. We're in a landmine situation where if you want to cross the field, just get used to the fact you're going to walk on a landmine. You're not going to get to the other side of the field with both legs. It's just not going to happen. We're not in that environment. Now I'm already canceled, so I can handle it. Like I could probably take another hit, but for the rest of you, I'd lay low, honestly. Definitely think twice before you post anything on this topic. It's just too toxic, too dangerous. All right. Let me give you a whiteboard of whiteboards, the presentation that you've all been waiting for. I'd like to explain how we got here. And by the way, you could call this an opinion, but it's also just true. I'll make sure you can both see this, don't worry. All right, so I've got two cameras, so you're not all going to see it as easily, but I'll put the photo online. It's already on my Twitter feed. So here's the idea. Uh, how fake news destroyed the planet. At the moment, we're telling ourselves, oh, these people are bad, or these people are bad, and they're forces, and the government's not doing enough, and why is Black Lives Matter supporting the bad guys, and all this stuff. I think that's all diversion. There is one source of the problem that is destroying the planet. There's just one. It's fake news. Just fake news. Now remember, the fake news people are also the people who built the we're looking for disinformation. So the fake news and the fact checkers are the same people. That's a real dangerous situation. It's the ultimate dangerous situation. And outside of the 1% of people who pay attention, 99% of the public doesn't know that the news is fake. They actually don't know. Now, when I say that, most people think, I know what you're saying, Scott. You're saying the MSNBC is fake, but the ones on the right are all real. No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. The news is fake, right? It's different kinds of fakes in different places, but it's not real news. All right. So the fake news told us of President Trump that he was colluding with Russia, which would make him a traitor. That he said that neo-Nazis were fine people, which he never said. He said the opposite. That would make him a racist. And he said you should drink bleach to get rid of your COVID. He never said that. That was also a hoax. But if he had, it would have been stupid. So the fake news told the public every fucking day that there was Russian collusion, fine people hoax, drink bleach, you got a traitor, a racist, stupid guy, and if you ever elected him, it would be the end of the world. So instead, they gave us Biden, and then Biden gave us the Ukraine war, the Israel war, and open borders, which is the end of the United States. This is actually the end of the world. If we kept going in this direction, it is not survivable. I just want to say that as clearly as possible. We have a system at the moment that is not survivable. This is an existential threat. The fake news has reached not just annoying levels, not just influential. It is now our biggest existential risk. It will determine where we put our limited money. It will determine if we spend ourselves into debt forever. It will keep the worst people in office. It will keep the best people out of office. It will make countries fight each other for the wrong reasons. It will make the nation itself turn against each other for reasons that didn't have to happen at all. They will give you CRT, ESG, and DEI. And these guys will tell you those are good ideas. And they will absolutely destroy the planet. So every time somebody tells you the problem is something else that's not fake news, they're wrong. Everything flowed from that. You can't think of anything that you would identify as a problem that did not flow directly, not indirectly, but directly from fake news. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the filter that you need to understand more than any other. Now, how many of you had thought of it this way? This is a reframe. How many of you thought of this reframe? Some of you had. That's good. Yeah. So almost everything comes from the same problem area. And as far as I know, the only person who's pushing back is Elon Musk. Do you know why he's the only person pushing back? There's an obvious reason. Well, two obvious reasons. Why he's the only one pushing back. Number one, he's the richest man in the world. which really helps. I can't tell you how many different ways that makes life easier. If you hadn't figured it out, it definitely gives you some powers other people don't have. But the other one is he has balls of steel. He is the only person I know who's building companies that will kill people absolutely guaranteed. And he just says it directly. Yeah, getting to Mars will kill people, but we have to do it. Yes, electric cars and self-driving cars, it's going to kill some people. But if you stay with it, you'll get to the point where the self-driving car could eliminate almost all traffic accidents, including drunk driving. So he's willing to push through death. Yeah, death. Like that doesn't even slow him down. Yeah, people are going to die, but we have to get to this thing. That's leadership, right? But it's also balls of steel. So we can't lose the X platform. It is really the last place that anything like free speech exists. All right, next story. So Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL is getting a lot of TV time. You might know that he and I are not friends because he's tried to destroy me for made-up reasons. Literally, tried to destroy me personally and professionally for made-up reasons. That's just a fact, right? However, given the recent events, I'm on his side. So at the moment, we have a common enemy. So as long as we have a common enemy, Jonathan Greenblatt, you are my friend. Despite trying to destroy me, I'm hoping you're over that. Well, let's hope we can get past that. At the moment, I'm 100% on his side. And here's one of the things he said that I agree with him totally. He was on MSNBC, and after giving a very emotional and impassioned talk about how bad things are in Israel right now, he blasted MSNBC because their script on the teleprompter referred to the Hamas terrorists as, quote, fighters. Fighters. And Jonathan Greenblatt says, quite reasonably, why are you calling terrorists fighters? That's a good question, isn't it? It's a really good question. And I like the fact that he called him out on it. And he called him out on MSNBC while he was on it. That was, first of all, pretty strong. Second of all, he's completely right. He's completely right. The choice of words really does matter. And that choice of words is pretty suspicious. So I'm glad he called him out on that. They're not fighters. They're monsters. They're terrorists. And as soon as you imagine they're anything else, you're lost. All right. And so the question that I ask because of that is, will Jonathan Greenblatt and the ADL try to get rid of the advertising on MSNBC, as he did on the X platform, when he thought that they were being a little anti-Semitic, or a lot anti-Semitic in that case? Probably not. No, he said he loves MSNBC. He's a big fan. But I'd ask the question, if they were to continue calling the Hamas terrorists fighters, do you think he shouldn't go after their advertising? I think he should, based on his own standard for that stuff. All right. Black Lives Matter out of Chicago. And I haven't seen anybody else make this distinction, but can we all agree that whenever you're talking about an organization, you're not talking about every person who's ever associated with them, right? My guess is that most people who have associated with Black Lives Matter have good intentions, wanted to make the world a better place. But somebody in leadership, I don't know if it's all of leadership or just some member of Black Lives Matter Chicago, has said a few things, such as all the captives, the Israeli people who were captured, were military and generals, which is absolutely not true. making it look like it isn't so bad that they have hostages. Oh my God. Um, and they're also, they put out some other things that are clearly supportive of the Hamas. Now, I saw a tweet from somebody who's based in the context, obviously a Jewish woman on the X platform, who, when she saw what Black Lives Matter Chicago was putting out, their opinions about this, tweeted this: Jews marched in Selma. Jews marched for George Floyd. Jews showed up for Black Lives Matter. BLM is a disgrace. We will all still be there for you guys next time, because that's who we are. But now we know who you are. Okay. So, first of all, it's a little unclear if this is Daniela Greenbaum Davis who's saying this. And it's a little unclear if she's saying she doesn't think that Jews, well, she's really speaking for herself, but she says we will be there for you guys. Who is you guys? Is you guys BLM? Because she just said BLM are horrible people. Are they going to be there for that? Or do they mean just Black Americans will be there for Black Americans? So it's a little unclear, but there's a punchline coming. All right, wait for the punchline. And by punchline, I don't mean funny. There's just a part to the story that pulls it all together. So Black Lives Matter Chicago is being awful. Daniela Greenbaum Davis on the X platform says, hey, Jews have supported you and now you're selling us out, basically. Who is this Daniela Greenbaum Davis? Look at the profile. A former producer for what show? The View. The View. Former producer for The View is done with BLM. Now, if you're looking for what I'll call the turning point for wokeness, and you're going to say to yourself, man, this feels like a turning point. Like if Harvard is now reviled, Black Lives Matter is reviled, and people who have who are support people from Harvard can't get jobs in some cases. Have we reached some kind of bottom? Here's my view. Not even close. Not even close. Because people don't change their minds because the facts changed. We don't live in that kind of a world. People just double down with whatever they're thinking or get angry or something, act out. But they don't change their mind too much. I do believe that minds will change, but it's going to take a whole lot more. So I think minds in America won't change until something that looks a lot like the Hamas attack on Israel, which is definitely coming. So the number of people we've let through the borders recently, and this is let's see, from Bill Malusian tweet. So internal CPB data at the border says these are the people who crossed illegally over the last 2 years from suspicious countries. Now, the individuals might not be specifically suspicious, but they come from places that are filled with terrorists. So Syria, 538, Yemen, 139, Iran, 659 people. 659 illegal Iranian immigrants. Now, I assume that means that's how many they caught, because, how else would they know they came and that they're illegal? Then, like Pakistan, 1,600, Egypt, 3,100, Uzbekistan, 13,000, Mauritania, 16,000, Turkey, 31,000. So these are people coming from places that have known ties to terrorism. At least people within the public have ties. Do you know what this didn't include? So this is the number who came in illegally. Do you know what it did not include? The people who walked right up to the border and said, I need asylum. I think that's a bigger number, isn't it? Like way bigger. So we're letting in some tens of thousands of people who are largely guaranteed to have within that big group some percentage of terrorists. It took 1,000 terrorists to bring Israel to its knees and create this massive response. 1,000. We've easily brought in 1,000 terrorists. Now we have a much bigger country, so it'd be harder, but they could mess up a city pretty badly. So if you don't think we're going to have a Israel-like situation, whether it's the cartels or, I don't know, radical Islamic something, we will. The reason we will is because we've designed the system to guarantee it. Just as I said, Israel's situation, where making peace really never made sense, so pretending to make peace was your best play, until a reaction, there was a big attack, and then you could get the freedom to do what you needed. That's our situation right now. We're basically just Israel, minus a few years. We're going to have this on our soil. And you don't have to wonder, because we've designed a system that guarantees it. The only thing it doesn't guarantee is the date. So if we just keep it open and keep bringing people in from parts of the world that have big populations of terrorists, and we're not doing a good job of checking, there isn't any other alternative. But it has to happen. If you say to yourself, oh, what can we do to prevent this gigantic bloody attack, which will be the worst thing America's ever seen? The answer is nothing, because we have to have the attack. Our design requires it, and also so does the solution. Because until you get rid of the wokeness, you can't fix anything. And it will take massive amount of bloodshed before people will change their minds and say, you know what? I really like wokeness, but I like staying alive even better. So I say this with all knowledge of the horrific pain and bloodshed that's happening in Israel. Nobody wants it, but it was a necessary step given the design of the system. The design of the system in their case is that people who want to kill Israelis are living next to Israelis. That's the design. That design only has one direction. It can only go the way it went. We have to do the same thing in America. Some of us won't survive because there will be a lot of death that happens, but there's no other way. You have to go through. You're going to have to go through an Israel war situation in America before we can deprogram the people who think that letting everybody in is a good idea. I don't see any other way. Here's what won't happen. We're not going to look at Israel and learn a lesson. Do you agree? We're not that smart. We're going to look at Israel and say, well, that won't happen here, right? It has to happen here, and it will happen here. I'm not trying to will it into existence. I don't want it to happen, but it's guaranteed. We've designed a system that guarantees it. We just don't know when. So I'll be staying away from public areas forever. Here's something that makes you scratch your head and say, is everything as rigged and terrible and corrupt as you imagine? And the answer is yes. Yes. Everything is rigged and corrupt as you imagine. Listen to this. So Jeff Clark tweeted this. I think he was an attorney. He worked for the Department of Justice. He did. Anyway, he said, I'll just read you the first part, and then I'll summarize the rest. He said, yesterday, the North Carolina General Assembly overruled 2 gubernatorial vetoes trying to block election reform. So in English, the General Assembly, passed 2 laws about election reform, and the governor tried to veto them. But the assembly had such a majority that they could overrule the veto. So, how interesting. Is it a Democrat governor? I didn't look at that fact, but kind of assumed it. So here are the things that the governor wanted to stop, but the assembly, by an overwhelming majority, apparently, because they overrode the vetoes, but the majority of the assembly wanted and thought these were good rules. Let me just give you a sense of what the Democrat governor didn't want as law. Let's see. Prohibits private non-governmental funding, including in-kind donations, of election activities. Example, Zuckerbucks. So it would make it illegal for somebody like a Zuckerman to put a ton of money in that would have any influence on the system, at least in North Carolina. They would retention of election records for 22 months. Who would disagree with retention of records, keeping them longer? Nobody. About provides clarification to authority and restrictions for poll observers. Oh, more clarity of how poll observation works. Is that a problem? Same-day registrant addresses are checked and returning mail will trigger retrieval of voted regular ballots. So just to process stuff, extends absentee ballots for 5 days, ballot challenges for 5 days. Very normal stuff. Poll closing times, makes it a misdemeanor crime for anyone other than the Board of Elections to affix a tracking code to absentee ballot requests. And that seems like pretty basic stuff. Pilot tests for signature verification, a new process for removing non-citizens from voter lists. Did any of that sound un-American? Was there anything on that list that sounded like anything but a good idea? And the Democrat governor tried to kill it twice. Well, there were 2 different bills that tried to kill it. Everything is exactly as corrupt as you think it is, because the effort to remove opportunities for corruption was violently disagreed with by the governor. I mean, it's so obvious now. It's just so obvious. All right, let me counter something I saw on social media before I go private with the locals people, give them a little extra. I've been seeing the argument, which is, unambiguously racist, that the problem in the Middle East is low IQs because the terrorists are, all dumb, so they're being sold this violent ideology and they believe it, and the people around them are also so dumb that they let it happen and support it. I disagree with that analysis, and here's what's wrong with it. You don't have to be dumb to be persuaded to do ridiculously dangerous, self-destructive things. As a trained hypnotist, let me tell you for sure, there's no difference between smart people and dumb people with hypnosis. In fact, that's one of the first things you learn. One of the first things you learn is you can't tell the difference by IQ, experience, confidence. It's not predictable. Smart people are just as easily hypnotized. What do you think that Lawrence Summers knew what he was doing when he was part of changes that turned Harvard into a place that even he doesn't respect? Do you think he understood where that was going? Probably not. And is Larry Summers or Lawrence Summers, is he a smart guy? Yeah. You wouldn't want to compete against him on an IQ test. He's super smart. Like you don't get out of Harvard with, without being super smart. At least when he went to Harvard. So yes, there's no such thing as being too smart to be influenced. It's not a thing. Even to the point of massive violence. Very easy to influence people. Michael Malice says it's easier to train a smart dog. All right, since you said it, I wasn't going to say this. When I learned hypnosis, I did learn that smart people were easier to hypnotize. I wasn't going to say it, but Michael Malice said it, so I'll just agree with him. And there was a theory to it. And the theory was that dumb people were too afraid. So they weren't sort of relaxing. They weren't buying into it. They were just like, oh, I think he's going to turn me into a zombie. Now, hypnosis doesn't turn people into zombies. But the smart people, you would say, hey, it's not going to turn you into a zombie. It's just a process. You could, get up and walk away anytime you want. And if you like, you could do your own research. Google it. See if anybody's ever in the history of the world done anything that they didn't want to do while they're under hypnosis. Now, people do interesting things like in stage hypnosis, but the trick for that is that some people don't mind doing weird things on stage. So the stage hypnotist knows how to pick people who will do things. So it has nothing to do with the hypnosis. It's that he picked the right people who would do things, basically. That's the trick. So they're also hypnotized. They're well hypnotized, but they're people who, in addition to being hypnotizable, are not especially embarrassed doing things on stage. So the idea is that the smart people would go along with the process because they wouldn't be afraid of it. Whereas the dumb people just reject it. Like, I don't know about this, so I'm going to stay away from it. Now, I would argue that something similar happened during COVID. The lower educated people often said, where's this shot coming from? I don't trust that at all. End of story. Smart people said, look, I did my own research. I checked the data that the people who make it gave me. I didn't need to check anything else because the people who made it, they got good data. And so I checked that data and it says everything's fine, improves my odds. So unlike you dumb people, I used my smartness to know that this was a good risk. And so I got the shot and 15 boosters too. So and again, I don't want to overgeneralize. There were smart people who didn't get the booster. There were dumb people who did get the booster. But as a general statement, smart people talk themselves into it. Would you agree with that? Would you agree that smart people talk themselves into it? And people who were maybe not as capable at looking at the science said, I don't have the skills to look into this myself. Not like you smart people who think you looked at the data and made up your own minds. I don't know. Just tell me who's promoting it. Oh shit, really? The people who are going to make billions of dollars whip this out in a few months? No thanks. I'll take my odds with the weaponized virus. I'm not sure it ever made sense to take your chance with a weaponized virus, but that's a whole other topic. Now, thanks for joining on the platforms that worked, Twitter and YouTube. I'm going to say goodbye to you guys and talk privately to the people over at Locals. Let's go private over here. Bye for now. See you tomorrow.